American Top 40.
Here's a group that's been around for many, many years. They were formed back in the late 60s. Fleetwood Mac. They've had a few successful albums. This is their first American Top 40 hit. At number 36, Over My Head.
You can take me.
From England, Fleetwood Mac at number 36 with a debut record called Over My Head.
American Top 40.
Well, the 15th most popular song in the nation this week is from the first album in the 32-year history of Billboard's album charts to hit number 1 after being on the chart for a full year. This album hit the top spot in its 58th week on the charts. Incredible. The album is Fleetwood Mac, and so is the group. Their song, their third hit from this album, is Say You Love Me. From Hollywood, this is Casey Kasem on American Top 40, and we're counting down the 40 most popular songs in the nation on our way to a brand new number 1. Well, now I have the latest hit by the English-American group who scored a big chart first last year. Their album was the first in the 32-year history of the album chart to hit number 1 after riding the chart for a full year. The album was titled simply Fleetwood Mac. And after its debut in August of 75, it remained on the chart, moving up and down, for a total of 58 weeks. Finally, it moved into the number 1 position in September of 76. Along the way, 3 big hit singles came out of that album, Over My Head, Rhiannon, and Say You Love Me, and that contributed to the success of the chart power of the LP. At the end of the year, the album came in right behind Peter Frampton's Monster LP as the second biggest album of 1976. This week, the first single from their latest album is up to number 28. Here on American Top 40 is Fleetwood Mac and Go Your Own Way.
Loving you isn't the right thing.
American Top 40.
This next song in the countdown is the 4th consecutive Top 40 hit by the 3-man, 2-woman group Fleetwood Mac. And it's the first of their quartet of hits to feature a lead vocal by one of the men in the band. Their first 3, Over My Head, Rhiannon, and Say You Love Me, were written and sung by the ladies, Christine McVie and Stevie Nicks. And this week, their latest hit, written and sung by Lindsey Buckingham, moves up to number 17. It's called Go Your Own Way. Here is Fleetwood Mac. The English-American group Fleetwood Mac on American Top 40 at number 17, moving up 3 with Go Your Own Way.
American Top 40.
Well, now I have the latest hit by the recording act who just won Playboy magazine's annual popularity poll. In the April issue of the magazine, when the results of the readers' poll were announced, this group beat out competition from supergroups like Wings, Eagles, and Chicago to be named the best group of 1976. And that wasn't the end of the recognition they got in this poll. They also had the second best pop album of the year, along with the second biggest single of 76. And one of the 2 women in the group, Christine McVie, was named one of the top 5 female vocalists of 1976. The group, one of the hottest in the business right now, is Fleetwood Mac. And this week, they're back on AT40 with their latest single. Debuting at 36, this one's called Dreams.
Now here you go.
American Top 40.
And look at this. The capper of this week's countdown becomes a super anniversary present for the Anglo-American group who sing it. You see, this month marks their 10th anniversary in the music business, and they really have good cause for celebration. Because during the past 9 months, they've put 2 huge number 1 albums on the Billboard LP chart. And this week, they add to that triumph with the very first number 1 single of their career. So, with a brand new number 1 song in America this week, here are Fleetwood Mac with Dreams. Well, when you're hot, you're hot. And this week, Fleetwood Mac is sizzling with both the number 1 album, Rumors, and the number 1 single in America, Dreams.
American Top 40.
Well, we have a new champ on the album chart for most weeks at number 1. For most of this decade, the leading album of the 70s for holding the number 1 position on the LP chart for the most weeks has been Carole King's Tapestry. It set the record in 1971 with 15 weeks in the number 1 spot. Last week, an album by a British-American group moved into a tie with its 15th week at number 1. This week, the challenger hits its 16th week at number 1 on the album chart and becomes the new champ of the 70s. Now, my reason for bringing the subject up at this particular moment is that a single from the album is the next song in the countdown. The album, Rumors. The song, Don't Stop. The group, Fleetwood Mac, at number 9.
American Top 40.
This is Casey Kasem on AT40 in Hollywood, counting them down. Well, it's time now for the song from an album which this week shatters a record established 16 years ago by Elvis Presley. In 1961, Elvis's album Blue Hawaii, from his movie of the same name, ran up the LP chart and held on to the number 1 spot for 20 weeks. Longer than any album by any other rock act before or since, until now. Last May, an album by a 5-member group of Britons and Americans moved into the number 1 position on the LP chart. And it hung on to tie Elvis's record last week at 20 weeks. And to set a new record this week at 21 weeks in the number 1 position. That album is Rumors by Fleetwood Mac. And from that LP, here's the 3rd most popular song in America this week.
American Top 40.
Well, now on American Top 40, I have the hit by the group that's gone through more membership changes since their first hit than any other group in history. Close challengers for this record would be the Supremes, the Temptations, and the Four Seasons, who've had 4 or 5 changes in personnel. But the group in first place have had a total of 8 different membership lineups since they began hitting the charts in 1970. 2 of their present 5 members have been part of all the different rosters. That would be Mick Fleetwood and John McVie. The other current members are Christine McVie, Stevie Nicks, and Lindsey Buckingham. All 5 together, Fleetwood Mac. Their latest smash, Don't Stop, did stop a couple weeks back at number 3. It's on its way down now, pausing this week at number 23. Fleetwood Mac on American Top 40, last week at number 15, this week down to 23 with Don't Stop. Hello and welcome to American Top 40. I'm Casey Kasem, and this is our weekly countdown of the 40 biggest hits in the USA. Well, we've got another interesting chart this week. Linda Ronstadt now has 2 singles in the top 40, and both are climbing. And Fleetwood Mac lost one and gained one. The 3rd hit song from their current album fell out of the survey, but the 4th hit song from that fantastic album debuts this week. As a matter of fact, it starts off the countdown for us, and here we go.
Number 40.
Fleetwood Mac's album Rumors has now sold over 6 million copies. And this week, the 4th hit song from it enters the countdown. First, there was Go Your Own Way, then Dreams, then Don't Stop, and now You Make Lovin' Fun. Here's Fleetwood Mac. Fleetwood Mac debuts with their 4th hit song from an album that's been number 1 for nearly 6 months. That's Rumors. The song is You Make Lovin' Fun.
American Top 40.
This is Casey Kasem in Hollywood, counting them down. And you know, back in 1962, the soundtrack album from the big film West Side Story hit number 1. Stayed there for an incredible 54 weeks. Well, the longest-running number 1 album in the past 15 years since that West Side Story album belongs to this group, Fleetwood Mac. They've had their album at number 1 for 28 weeks now. The album called Rumors. And here's a song from it, You Make Lovin' Fun.
American Top 40.
This is Casey Kasem in Hollywood, and now I have the current hit by the only recording act during the decade to hit the top 10 with 4 separate singles from the same album. Now, the 70s have been characterized by some of the biggest selling pop albums of all time. Record-setting LPs like Carole King's Tapestry, Peter Frampton's Live album, and Stevie Wonder's Songs in the Key of Life. Well, last week, I told you that another smash album has become the number 1 album of the 70s. Become number 1 because it spent 29 weeks in the number 1 spot on the LP chart. And the enormous success of that album has spilled over into the singles chart by producing 4 top 10 hits. More single top 10 songs from the same album than any other album during the 70s. By now, I'm sure you know I'm talking about Fleetwood Mac and their sensational album, Rumors. The unbelievable Fleetwood Mac and their 4th consecutive top 10 record, all from the same LP, Rumors.
American Top 40.
This is Casey Kasem on American Top 40 in Hollywood. And now we're up to the song from the most expensive album in the history of recorded music. It's a 2-record set that cost more than $1 million to produce. It wasn't long ago that you could produce a decent motion picture for $1 million, a talkie. So how does a rock group manage to spend so much money on just an album? Well, the artists who put this record together sold 13 million copies of their previous album, so they had the clout to spend all the time they wanted on their new album. They didn't have to compromise. If they weren't satisfied with something, they just kept doing it over and over and over until they got it exactly the way they wanted it. And it took them nearly 2 years to get this new album exactly right, working at the Village Studio in Los Angeles, where the rental is $19,000 a week. And half that time, about a year, was spent on the drum tracks alone, making the beat the most expensive element on the album. And that's how Fleetwood Mac managed to put $1 million into the making of their latest LP, Tusk. The title song from it is at number 16. Fleetwood Mac and Tusk.
American Top 40.
Every week, we count down the most popular songs in the USA, and we're up to number 25. This moves up 6 notches. It's Stevie Nicks with Don Henley and Leather and Lace.
My lace, take from me.
Stevie Nicks on American Top 40 with Don Henley at number 25, second week on the chart. The follow-up to Stop Dragging My Heart Around, Leather and Lace. Now we're up to a chart coincidence. There are 2 artists in the survey this week, both of them members of Fleetwood Mac, and both of them musicians who helped bring Fleetwood Mac its greatest success. It was 7 years ago that Fleetwood Mac, a British blues band, was taking inventory. In their 8 years, they had placed 12 albums on the American LP charts and had gone through a lot of members. They were in Los Angeles and were down to just 3 members at the moment: Mick Fleetwood, John McVie, and Christine McVie. And they went out to look for a studio to record in as a trio. They went to a place called Sound City, and the engineer there, to demonstrate the quality of the studio and equipment, played them a tape that had been recorded there recently. The 3 members of Fleetwood Mac thought the studio sounded good. But what really impressed them were the unknown girl singer and male guitarist on the demo they were hearing. Mick Fleetwood was so impressed that he telephoned the twosome and offered them a job with Fleetwood Mac without an audition. And within a few months, the new 5-member Fleetwood Mac was well on its way to becoming one of the biggest acts of the 70s. This week, that girl singer and that male guitarist, both still members of Fleetwood Mac, are in our countdown back-to-back with their own separate hits. Stevie Nicks with Leather and Lace and Lindsey Buckingham with Trouble. We just heard Stevie, now here's Lindsey. Up 6 notches this week to number 24.
On American Top 40, I'm Charlie Van Dyke for Casey Kasem. Now, the story of how pop music history was made by accident when a famous group went shopping for a new studio. It happened in the early 1970s in Los Angeles. The members of this successful English rock group were in town looking for a new studio to record their next album. They were checking out a place called Sound City, and an engineer there put on a tape to demonstrate the studio's technical qualities. It was an album by an unknown American male-female duo. Here's what he played.
And if you go forward, I'll meet you there. And if you climb up to the cold, freezing air.
That's a piece of the song called Frozen Love by a duo called Buckingham Nicks. Well, when the English band shopping for a studio, Fleetwood Mac, heard the tape, they forgot all about searching for a studio. They asked the duo, Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham, to join the act. And the rest is rock history. First, the smash album called Fleetwood Mac. Then the album that followed became the number 1 album of 1977. Sold 12 million copies and spent 31 weeks at number 1. The album, Rumors. In the 1980s, the members of Fleetwood Mac have not only had more hit albums as a group, but have made successful solo albums. Now, they've regrouped for a new album, Tango in the Night. Here are Mick Fleetwood, John McVie, Christine McVie, Lindsey Buckingham, and Stevie Nicks. Fleetwood Mac at number 18 with Big Love.
Now on American Top 40, we're up to the latest hit by the superstar rock group who once had their name and their act stolen while they were on vacation. Here's that bizarre story. It happened 13 years ago to the supergroup Fleetwood Mac. They were still based in London at the time, and they were touring the U.S. following the release of their album Mystery to Me. But personal conflicts between some of the members forced them to cancel the tour midway. Everybody decided to split and cool off for a while. But meanwhile, back in London, their manager decided he controlled the rights to the name Fleetwood Mac, and he thought concert money was being lost. So he got 5 English musicians together in a hurry, called them Fleetwood Mac, and sent them over the States to finish the tour. But Fleetwood Mac fans didn't buy the switch. So many people demanded their money back that the tour of the bogus band was canceled. Well, as soon as band founders Mick Fleetwood and John McVie, the source of the band's name, found out what was going on, they were furious. They rushed back to London and got a temporary court order preventing their manager from using their name. It took a few more years of courtroom battles before it was finally determined that the name Fleetwood Mac belonged to the band, not to the manager. Meanwhile, the real Fleetwood Mac became bigger than ever. Their current hit is at number 7 this week. Here's Big Love. Holding at number 7 for a second week, Fleetwood Mac and Big Love. It's the first hit from their new album, Tango in the Night. At number 19 is Fleetwood Mac, a veteran group that have been through some rocky times, divorces, disagreements, and long periods when no one believed they'd ever play together again. But they have stayed together, and a few months ago they released their first album in 5 years, Tango in the Night. Lindsey Buckingham says, "We were able to separate our priorities. Whatever those emotional things might have been, we put them aside and got on to making music. To be able to come back with something that's really strong like Tango in the Night just shows a little touch of the human spirit in there." End of quote from Lindsey Buckingham of Fleetwood Mac, holding together after all these years. Stevie Nicks on vocals and the rest of Fleetwood Mac backing her up. That's 7 Wonders up a notch to number 19 as the countdown rocks on.
American Top 40.
The numbers get smaller and the hits get bigger. Now we're up to the famous band who made party animals out of 29 chickens. I'm talking about Fleetwood Mac, and they've written their own chapter in the AT40 Book of Rock and Roll Rowdiness. Happened about 5 years ago. Fleetwood Mac were out on tour, and they just finished up a show in San Francisco. They were staying at the Fairmont Hotel, a very elegant hotel, same one they used for the TV show Hotel. Now, on the last night in town, in the middle of a long, hard tour, the band got seized with party mania, and they decided to play a little joke on their tour manager. While he was out finishing up some business, counting receipts and things, John McVie and a couple other Big Mac cohorts went down to the lobby and bribed a hotel employee. They told him to go down to San Francisco's Chinatown and buy 29 live chickens and 2 bales of hay, and to bring it all back and put it in their road manager's room for a little hoedown. Well, John invited some guests, and soon they had a party. The members of Fleetwood Mac, about 20 other people, 2 bales of hay, and 29 squawking chickens. Well, about 3 a.m., the hoedown was going full tilt, and the road manager came back to his room. When he opened the door, his jaw dropped to the floor. But not to be outdone, the road manager went him one better. He and the rest of the party animals rounded up the chickens, they shoot them all out into the hall, and then into the elevator, and then pushed the button for the lobby. 90 seconds later, the lobby of the beautiful Fairmont Hotel exploded with a flock of 29 squawking, flapping chickens. John said the hotel clerks had to chase them around the lobby to catch them. We haven't been back to the Fairmont since. I can't imagine why. End of quote. Funny joke if you're not a chicken and you don't have to clean up afterwards. That's Fleetwood Mac with a chapter from the AT40 Book of Rock and Roll Rowdiness under the heading of Foul Party Animals. At number 16, Fleetwood Mac and Little Lies.
Lies, tell me sweet little lies.
The third top 40 hit from the album Tango in the Night. Following the hits Big Love and 7 Wonders, that's Fleetwood Mac with Little Lies.
American Top 40.
Billboard ranks them, AT40 counts them down. At number 6 is a group who back in 1970 were facing a personnel crisis. They had just 6 days to go before launching their first big American tour, and they had no keyboard player. So at the last minute, their bass player, John McVie, says, "Hey, how about my wife?" Christine McVie, John's wife, had been playing keyboards in a club band, and she could also sing and write pretty well. So the group took a chance, and after a quick audition, hired her on the spot. Well, Christine and John divorced a while back, but they're still good friends and they still make music together in Fleetwood Mac. Here's a song Christine wrote with her new husband, Eddie Quintella. Little Lies, Fleetwood Mac.
Tell me sweet little lies.
Survey song number 6, Little Lies, Fleetwood Mac's third top 40 hit from their album Tango in the Night. Now we're up to the band, who are tied with an orchestra for having the most musicians ever on a top 10 hit. The orchestra is actually the largest act ever to make the top 10, and they did it with a medley of melodies by classical composers set to a dance beat. Listen. In 1982, that hit the top 10. Hooked on Classics by the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra from London, conducted by Lewis Clark. An orchestra with 130 musicians. Now, only one other top 10 hit has featured that many musicians. It was a hit by a 5-member English-American band, along with the members of a college marching band. And together, they sounded like this. In 1979, it hit number 7, and the song is Tusk by the 5 members of Fleetwood Mac and the 125 members of the University of Southern California Marching Band. Their total, Mac plus USC, 130 musicians. And that's how Fleetwood Mac are tied in an odd chart record. Along with the Royal Philharmonic, they had the most musicians on a top 10 hit. They're at normal size on their current hit at number 8, Fleetwood Mac, just 5 of them, and Little Lies.
Tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies.
Fleetwood Mac's biggest hit in 5 years, since the song Hold Me hit number 4 back in 1982. This one hit number 4 2 weeks ago, held there, now falls this week to number 8. Little Lies.
American Top 40.
I'm Casey Kasem. This is American Top 40. Now we're up to the latest hit by the English-American group who hold a unique chart record. They've had the only album in history to spend more than a year on the chart before it finally reached number 1. Happened back in the mid-70s. Their album debuted on Billboard's 200 title chart in August of 1975. Went up and then went down, then went up again, step by step. Generated hit singles like Over My Head, Rhiannon, and Say You Love Me. Finally, in September of 1976, the album called Fleetwood Mac hit number 1. A total of 58 weeks on the chart before it hit the top. The slowest rising number 1 album in history. By the way, Fleetwood Mac aren't the only super act to take their time hitting the top. The second slowest was the debut album by Whitney Houston. Spent a little less than a year, 50 weeks on the album chart before it rose to the top in March of 86. And the third slowest riser was Sports by Huey Lewis and the News. Took 39 weeks before hitting number 1 in June of 1984. But Fleetwood Mac are the only act to spend more than a year on the album chart before hitting the top. Well, 5 albums later, Fleetwood Mac are still going strong. Here's a hit from their current album, Tango in the Night. At number 18, it's Everywhere. Fleetwood Mac at number 18 with Everywhere. Follow up to Little Lies, which hit number 4 back in November.
Casey's Coast to Coast.